Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this titillating conversation today. The more we speak about sustainability, the more we can actually action in the future. So I'm very excited to be here. And let's start the conversation with two presentations. I believe, Julie, you're the first one up.
Thank you. International co-production. Um, so there are several ways, you can go to the next slide. There are several ways to partner and collaborate internationally speaking. Um, Official treaty co-production, which is my specialty, which is an area that Telefilm is an expert on, is only one way to do it. It certainly is the way that maximize all the national benefits, but it's not the only way. There are also the possibility of co-ventures and what we call here service productions. But the goal here today is to focus more on official co-production. So let's delve into that. Um, that you can go 2 slides later, Jennifer. Thank you. So an official co-production, as opposed to other type of collaboration, is a form of collaboration that is done under an official treaty. So an international agreement or MOU signed between countries that provides a framework for audiovisual work produced in collaboration by producers from these two countries. It allows the co-producers to share the risks and responsibilities related to a project. It also allows that project, once certified, to be defined as a national production in Canada, which all that it entails in terms of access to money, not guaranteed, but at least eligibility to it. Also allows funding in the co-producing countries, and in the case of Canada and many other countries, to Eurimages funding. It also gives access to a greater audience, a greater distribution networks, and immense pool of creators and technicians. So several advantages to official international co-production. And next slide. Canada is the champion in terms of number of treaties. We have 59 international treaties, so the potential for collaboration is magnified. The modernized treaties, which allows for a bit more flexibility, are very popular. Right now, we have modernized treaty with Belgium, China, India, Ireland, Jordan, Luxembourg, New Zealand, Ukraine, France, Switzerland, and more are underway. Each treaty is a bit different, so it's really important when you envision a co-production to go into that treaty and read it carefully and reach out to Telefilm if you have any question. Don't think because you did a co-production with Ireland, for example, and your next in the past, and your next one is with Switzerland, that is exactly the same. It's not. The general parameters or ideas are always the same, but the details are not. And as we all know, the devil is in the detail. You can go to the next slide. So I alluded to the fact that we're experts, and we certainly are, but just like co-productions are works of collaboration, co-production in Canada is a work of collaboration in itself between three main government organizations. Canadian Heritage is the ministry that is what we call the competent authority. So they're the ones that negotiate the treaty, that determine what are going to be the priority countries, which treaties are going to get modernized, or new countries that we're going to enter into treaty with. So that's really their turf. Under a mandate from Canadian Heritage, Telefilm is the administrative authority. So as such, we're responsible to evaluate and recommend the project that can be recognized as official audiovisual treaty co-production. And then at the end of the game is CAVCO, the Canadian Audiovisual Certification Office, which receives a recommendation and administer federal tax credit. Obviously, one of the main incentive to structure something as an international co-production. In the next slide, thank you. I go quickly over the general parameters. Again, I invite you to consult each treaty. This is a very general slide, but each treaty is slightly different. Typically, a co-production will be entered, a co-production agreement will be between the single purpose company rather than the parent companies. Not that it's what makes sense in terms of chain of title. Usually you have to make sure that you specify the percentage of the share of copyright, revenues, financing structure. It's important to always keep in mind that at the core of every international co-production is balance. So a balance in the share of creative national spend profit. The modernized treaty also require distribution or broadcast commitment in Canada. We expect equivalent producer credits. We know that it's not always possible, but it's really what we're aiming for. Every element that is from a country that is not part of that international co-production deal has to be requested, specifically supported, argued for, and it's a matter of discretion by both admin authorities. So whether it's key personnel from another country that is not, Canada, France, in the case of a co-production between Canada, France, or technical services that are elsewhere, it's very important to disclose that early on so that we can look into it and see whether it's feasible and can fit within the parameters of that treaty. Everything is always a mutual approval process, so both admin authorities need to agree on any element that is discretionary. In the next in the next slide, just general parameters. The first thing you need to do a co-production is a co-producer. The best way to meet a co-producer is to network at various events. You can also look at the Rendezvous Canada website, which is updated regularly and contains a directory of project, producer. You can even filter by genre. Yeah, so a lot of possibilities out there. Next slide. Co-production in Canada is a two-stage review process. It's the case in most countries, but not always. So the first stage is a preliminary recommendation, which is a more in-depth analysis, which occurs at least 30 days before principal photography. You will need for that to have a signed co-production agreement to tell us which elements of your projects are from non-co-producing country. You will need to have a minimum percentage of financing, in the case of Canada, 40%, and a few affidavits for the creative personnel. Later in the process, you will get, when you get to final costs, you will get to the final recommendation stage, and then we will see if everything matches. We will look at the credits, ask if for any change in citizenship, final affidavit. So it's an update on the project to make sure that it's still eligible. And last but not least, Telefilm super co-production team. So we're there to help. Our goal is definitely to make it possible. Co-production can be complex, it can be daunting, but we're there to help, support, and guide. We cannot give advice, that's not our role, but we can certainly try to steer you in the right direction and brainstorm to you, make sure that you have thought and covered all the angles. So thank you very much. And I hope to see many co-production. It is, financing is harder and harder and harder to get. We see that. And co-production, international co-production is definitely a way to maximize and amplify all sources of financing and maximize your public. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. This was really great. We'll have some questions for you after Thierry's presentation.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. I will try to be quick. Just to set the scene, Eurimages is a film fund of the Council of Europe, which is an international organization based in Strasbourg in France. It was created in 1949, and the main aim is to defend human rights, rule of law, and democracy. And within this remit, Eurimages was created in 1989, so a long time ago now. And the aim of Eurimages is the main goal is to promote freedom of expression, cultural diversity through the cooperation between independent filmmakers. Just to add one point to Julie's presentation, the Council of Europe has also an instrument which is a convention on cinematographic co-production, which is basically an international treaty for co-production, which can be used by countries which are not as active as Canada in setting up tailor-made treaties. So it opens a way for collaboration between countries who do not have all these co-production treaties in place. Eurimages currently has 39 member countries, so it's mainly countries in Europe, but the fund is open to non-European countries, and Canada is a member of the fund since 2017, so it's quite a time now. So, as you may see, we have member countries with very different profiles and also including different kind of audiovisual and film industries. So this has also an impact on what we do in terms of sustainability. Our main activities, we have 4 support programs, the main one being the co-production support. I will not go into the others. We distribute roughly 20 million euros every year within this program. And it's mainly the idea is to support films made in co-production between at least 2 member states of Eurimages. It can be more. We also have the opportunity to include non-member countries into co-production within certain limits. And we grant a maximum of 500,000 euros per film. We support feature-length films, fiction, animation, or documentaries, but they must all be intended for a theatrical release. So our support represents generally between 5 and 20% of the budget of the film. So it can be very different from one film to another. And within this support program, we have 2 overarching strategies, as I can say. One is for gender equality, diversity, and inclusion, and the other one is for environmental sustainability. For the moment, at Eurimages, we have 2 different working groups for these 2 topics. I know that in a lot of funds, it's in the same group of supports or projects, but historically we work on gender equality for more than 10 years now, so it's more an addition than a complement. So since 2020, Eurimages included in its statutory document a mention on the environmental impact of the fund. So it concerns its operation, but also the implementation of its program. And since 2021, we have a study group which is in charge of defining the strategy and action plan. And also it serves as a platform of exchange of knowledge. Within this group, we have representatives of member states, but also some specialists of the field, which are delegated by their national authorities. So we had three priorities when we started. So the first one was to start with us. So we had a carbon emission assessment in 2022. I will go quickly on this because we did not renew the experience since then, and it was not really a surprise in the end. Then we introduced in 2023 a new selection criteria for the co-production support. And lastly, this year, we started a new project which corresponded to the aim to support exchange of good practices between the professional of our member states. So regarding the carbon impact assessment, it was based on the data from 1929. As we all know, the world changed a lot since then, and we changed also a lot our processes. But more or less, our travels are the main emissions, and it's also how to say, a dilemma in a sense, because we are in an international organization. We are here to promote cooperation. So it comes with travels, but I think it's also a general issue for international co-production, whatever co-production it is. So regarding the co-production support, we started by assessing the difficulties we would have by implementing measures in this program. The first one was to not exclude any producers from our support opportunities. So as I mentioned, we have producers coming from a very wide variety of background and countries. And introducing the strict measures or particular measures may risk to exclude some of them from the support opportunity. Also, a lot is happening on a national level, and we didn't want to add another layer of obligation. For instance, Telefilm Canada does something for the Canadian producers with sustainability plans and so on. So if we implement a different kind of sustainability plan, it comes with a lot of difficulty for the producers when applying to Eurimages. The third difficulty concerns the harmonization and coordination between tools. This is something that Zsofia knows very well, I guess, meaning that some countries have calculators in place, compulsory calculators, not compulsory calculators, different kind of calculators. It's the same with certifications. And it would be very difficult for Eurimages to impose one tool among the other. And the last point is the fact that Eurimages comes at the end of the financing, so we are more like a gap financer, and projects are supposed to start shooting shortly after receiving our support notifications. So in principle, producers should start working on a sustainability plan much before applying to Eurimages. It does not mean they cannot do anything when they apply to the fund, but it makes things a bit more difficult. So despite all this, we introduced a seventh selection criteria to select the project supported by the fund. And it's a very loose one, I admit. So it's assessing the existence of measures put in place at the time of application. But the main idea was to put this topic on the table for the decision makers. And indeed, it started to be much more discussed during the last 2 years. So it's more and more systematic to have an assessment of what the producers intend to do during the shooting. I will not go into all these details. It's really relating to our assessment of the project. But for the moment, it's based on the producer's declaration. So there is no concrete verification afterwards of what they actually did. They present what they have, sustainability plans. They indicate if they use carbon calculator certification, if they have green consultant or green managers on set. And then the experts sitting in the juries to the best of their knowledge, because they do not have all knowledge in the field. They take this into account amongst all the other selection criteria. At this stage, this is not a requirement. It's a plus for projects which are ranked at the same level. So it can make a difference, and it did in some cases, but it's not exact science in any case. But the aim, as I said, was really to raise awareness of the subject and say that we care about that, and also to include this aspect in the decision-making process. One important point is also relating to our third priority, is about education. We realized that having people being much more aware of what's happening in the field was really important, including us. So I mean, including people working in film funds, also people taking part in the decision making and support decisions, and of course for the producers, because a lot of them do work in countries where they cannot access education on the matter. So that's why we started a project earlier this year. We had a call for proposals to select a project to develop an e-learning platform in the field, and we started to work with the French association EcoProd. The project should start at the end of this year or early next year, and well, really the aim is to preach the Bible, if I may, so that when a green manager arrives on set, most of the people in the crew or working on set are already aware of the major principles or the basics of a green film production. So that's more or less it. We'll start to renew our sustainability strategy in the coming months. And really the idea is to build on this e-learning platform and try to develop knowledge of the matter within the member states. We also think of introducing more stricter measures in the support, co-production support, especially at the end of the project. And of course, cooperation between public institutions remain a key, and we have to exchange a lot to try to harmonize our process. So that's all for me. You can contact me if you have any questions about Eurimages. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Thierry. I'm really looking forward to all the new measures you're taking. It's extremely important, the work you do with Eurimages. I think it's really shaping our industry. I know that just from like how many applications we had to help who needed some sustainability advice, and producers were like, oh, Eurimages is asking us, what do we do? So it has it has a big impact. I think it's extremely important to see where the change comes from in our industry. as a practitioner, sometimes I actually have to take a pause and acknowledge how far we've came in the last few years. I don't know about you, Gudula and Carolina, but a lot of change happened. If I just list out a few of them, which is like the 5% green bonus in Austria, the domestic supports throughout Europe in like Slovakia, Hungary, the new agreement in the Czech Republic, New Zealand and their amazing initiatives, Ireland putting so much fund towards sustainability, a number of film funds, I think almost all film funds that I know of in Europe, and industry bodies introduce some kind of sustainability measures in some shape and form. So here we are, but we've still got a long way to go. I do have to say that we're at the beginning. It's undeniable that finance is extremely important. That's why we're here today, but also spreading knowledge and changing mindsets is equally important. So I'd like to ask all the participants to say a few words about their own background and about their own industry, sector and country, and about what they think in your view. And I will start with Gudula and Karina, because you're the closest to me in Europe. No, you're the first ones on my screen. So if you can say a few words about your background and what you think is important about sustainability, finance, and policies. And I'm starting with you from a perspective as well that you're both are also sustainability consultants. So you and I we're working together upwards, and then we'll have Julie and Thierry who are the pressure from top down. So it's going to be nice to have a look at that.
Yeah, I can start, Gudula. It's okay for you. I'm very glad to be here. Yes, I came from the production side, so which means assistance and coordination management. And I took the chance to make this training to become a green consultant. And with Gudula, actually, we were together in this journey. And we noticed that in Switzerland, as a small country and a small industry, we didn't have nothing about sustainability actually in the film industry. And the big challenge also is that we are a co-production country. So we figured out that we have to, with our association, Green Film Action, to spread the word in Switzerland, to connect the different regions, which is challenging because we have different languages and mentalities also. And to keep an eye and a dialogue with the fundings and the institutions. So this is actually everything is on process now, because we figured out we were like a few people in the industry. Everyone was like doing something in his closest reverie and influence reverie, but we have to stick together actually. And the aim also is to, of course, to stick together with our neighbors and internationally. Because also as a green consultant on set, you figure out pretty quickly that you have to start early, really early in the process, also to raise sensibility and awareness, and also I think for financing things and stuff. Yeah, but also to make it happen, to learn from each other. And I think it's everything is really in an ongoing process, but we don't have the standards, and so we are trying to work on this with a few topics and working groups, but Gudula can tell more about this.
Karina, am I right to assume that some of the most frequent co-production partners for you in Switzerland are your neighboring countries, so Germany, Italy,
Yeah.
France. Do you have any other frequent ones? Because I think it's quite important to acknowledge that even if you perhaps don't have the standards, like Germany has the environmental standard in place, France's CNC, the National Film Fund, is requiring carbon calculation. Italy is providing support in different regions. It's quite important to acknowledge that depending on your co-production agreement, you'll have to do a carbon calculator or a carbon calculation, or you'll be able to access some kind of support. So working together actually comes into the picture when it's about co-production, not just because of the basic co-productions we have to work together, but from a sustainability point of view as well.
Yes, of course. And this is a big challenge also to try to get an harmonization or to figure out pretty quickly who is in charge and who is doing what actually. And we have a few tools now in Switzerland, which are great. But yeah, we have to move forward actually, because we are way behind from our neighbors anyway. And the mindset is changing, but it's difficult. So you have to be like really positive and charming in a way. And
I just want to give you some encouragement. I talked to a lot of different countries and a lot of and whether that's the UK or Canada or Ireland, who we sometimes look up to in terms of like, they're so far down the road in terms of sustainability. Everyone always says, we're so behind. We're just at the beginning. No one ever feels like, okay, we changed. We've already changed the globe. So I think you're doing a great job. And so Gudula, can you tell us a little bit about your experience as well?
Yeah, I have been producer for many years, so also in international co-production. So this was always important, let's say, from this point of view, looking how we can do a co-production with all the pros and cons possible, more pros than cons for sure. Access to the market and so on. So it was logical in some way or in any way to also to include sustainability issues now on the international co-productions. So we began. You said it's okay to say we are all beginners, but there are some already achievements already in Switzerland. So there is it was founded a website for sustainable arts, it's called. Now we as Green Film Action are leading it. There is a training to be green consultant. There were trained up to now about 10 green consultants. But now as there are no regulations right now, well, I will jump to the regional fund. One regional fund is beginning to ask for to have a green consultant in the production and to use the carbon calculator, but basically there is no demand yet. So as producers are not, let's say, forced to respect any regulations because they are not yet. So there's no much need for the producers to engage or to bring a green consultant to the production team. So that's a little bit the problem right now, but there will be in 2025, 26, it's important years, let's say, in the sustainability in Switzerland, because that's now in the new cultural message. It's written that sustainability is playing a role. So also other partners from institutions as administration, as well as museums, for example, theaters and so on, are working on own measures and plans. Now we have to bring people together or exchange. So that's even sometimes difficult within the film activity, that we don't know what the festivals are going. For example, they were having a carta for certain measurements, but in the beginning we didn't know about it, for example. So the worlds have to be brought together and even more exchange. But they're now there's also carbon calculator specifically for Switzerland, on the Klimaaktiv calculator, which was adapted to Switzerland. Then there is the regional fund from Zurich began to ask for certain measures using a carbon calculator and employing green consultants. So for higher budgeted films, documentaries, and fiction. So there's something, something coming up in the next years, and it will be very interesting, to see what happens. Or to also, we want to be part of this, so we will be part of this, let's say, because even if Switzerland disadvantage that they are a bit late, but on the other hand, now we can use all the other experiences and partners in the sense of exchange and network, and see what they already made, maybe some good and bad experiences, so we can profit from this. So everything.
I think it's very important. Yeah, I think it's very important what you say about the baseline and starting where we're starting from in terms of sustainability. And it must be acknowledged that there are regional differences, there are cultural differences, and that will have an impact on how sustainability is accepted and approached. And what you said about demand as well, like it's going to be really nicely segueing into Julie, because Julie, I'm going to ask you now. So say producers are alone can't create the demand because it's just a few producers being activists, but you, let's say, sitting on the top, you actually have the right to, or well, the opportunity to change things. So what do you do at Telefilm Canada about sustainability?
As much as we can. I would say that first, what drove all of that, or in the background, is definitely collaboration. So we've learned through our journey in the EDI sphere as well, that working together, benchmarking nationally and internationally, being part of key industry collectives, and there are many in Europe, in North America, and Canada, is really key. And from all those dialogue, benchmarking, and collaboration, our first step was to force producers to think about it. So that's step one. So Telefilm is the leader in Canada in terms of standard budget template. The Telefilm budget tends to be adopted by other Canadian organizations. So since 2023, we have introduced key lines in the budget to force people to think. So different measures about eco-sustainability that have been integrated in the standard budget in 2023. So that was step one, because we believe that it's really, really important to think about it from the onset, from the inception of the project. We have, and then you have requirements and you have tools, and I think it's very important as a funder that the tools come and support your requirements. So we do that very intentionally. So you have the lines in the budget. Then we created a template sustainability form that when you receive a positive financing offer, you have to provide that standard template sustainability form, again, forcing you to think about it and be very intentional about what your actions are going to be in order to make this project sustainable. And I guess it's a prime announcement. Since last year, we were requiring carbon calculator for high budget productions, but now we're going one step further. And as of April 2024, we will be asking for carbon calculators for every production budget over $500,000. We've already announced that to the Producer Association, and we're very happy to see that they're very receptive to that. They believe in it. They believe that it's something that has to be done. So we're very happy about that. We're not imposing a carbon calculator, and I really can relate with what Thierry was saying, because by definition, and I'm here also with a bit like with a co-production hat, we believe that to make it possible to maximize adherence from everyone to these tools, that it's better if we don't impose one at this stage. So this way they can adapt to other carbon calculators that other funders can impose. So we impose the use of some carbon calculators, but we don't specify which carbon calculators need to be used. And we also have a very extensive toolbox on our website where you can access links to several organizations and organisms that provide lists of suppliers and regulations and how to use a carbon calculator, what carbon calculators are out there, to really try to equip our clients to face that. In terms of co-production, I would say, and it echoes as well what Karina and Gudula was saying, I think it's important at the very least to make sure that we always say co-production is a marriage. You have to make sure that your partner has the same values as you. I think that's really important. And then you figure things out. I think that all these eco-sustainability measures shouldn't be seen as blockers or hindrance. They can definitely be, on the contrary, triggers to creativity and problem solving. And if you're both have that, if you share that mindset, I think all the funders are there to make it work.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on the announcement. This is really exciting. Again, I've got two follow-up questions for you. One, the template you mentioned, is this something that we should imagine it as some of the European broadcasters and some of the streamers have like a green light checklist? I think it started out at some point in different parts of the industry as a tick box exercise, but I do actually see a lot of value in tick box exercises as well, because we're forcing to tick those
first is
boxes.
to
We're
force
forcing habits to
it's to
form.
force the reflection, because we're not going to force a green consultant, for example, but the fact that the line is there so that we advertise that it's an eligible cost. And honestly, it's not that it was not an eligible cost before, but by putting it in the forefront, by advertising it, we hope that it will encourage people to have green consultant, to use electrical cars, to recycle the materials from said building and all that kind of stuff. So by adding that line, by making it intentional, by advertising it, we're hoping that it's gonna.
Well, that is some of the biggest support. The biggest support we can get on set is personal support from the production execs, head of productions, line producers, and head of departments. If they personally embrace it, that's one. That's about the personality. And second is the actual tangible support. And sometimes rules, requirements, policies, regulations, mandates can be very positive from that perspective as well. I've got one more follow-up question for you. I get really excited about data, and it looks like, to me, it looks like you'll have a lot of data at your hand, especially with this new announcement. Are you allowed to? Are you planning anything to draw conclusions? Let's say in terms of like sustainability, green premium, or like my friend likes to say, dirty discount, is something that's always playing at the mind of producers. So now you're going to have obviously a lot of data about how many productions are accessing sustainability. Are you thinking about publishing something on, is there a green premium that actually exists? Is there a country where it's cheaper to be more sustainable than any other countries, if we're considering co-production?
I wish we would have that much data. I love data too, but I think you're being a bit optimistic at the moment.
I tend to be.
That's great. And our data right now is very Canadian, so we don't collect data necessarily in other jurisdictions. Plus, collecting data in Europe, it's a whole other ballgame. So right now we're very much focusing on Canada. But we did a survey in 2022. I think definitely did one in 2023 called the Eco Awareness Survey Report, with 300 workers and participants on production being surveyed. And we did commission a study which is called Estimating the Carbon Footprint in Canada's Audiovisual Sector, both of which are public. They're published on our website in the eco-awareness toolbox, and it did provide some very interesting data. It confirmed things that we suspected, like the fact that transport, Canada is a big country, of course, transport, and I guess it's even more so if it's an international co-production, transport represent 58% on average of
Wow.
like the carbon footprint impact, followed by materials. So things like set buildings and like that. So at least it gives you like, okay, so if we tackle that, like just transport, we focus, that's 58% on average. Like you focus on that, then and can make a significant impact. So yes, data is important, and because we collect the sustainability plan at the entrance, the carbon footprint report at the end, and do the survey, we do try to then use that intelligence to guide us.
Well, no
in
wonder
future policy.
you're one of the only countries in Canada's one of the only country where I believe you've got a map of great connections together with like festivals, live events, music installations, and whatever. So a map like that is invaluable. I know a few European countries are thinking about building it, but basically because, well, transport is a really big deal, energy is a really big deal. If you can connect to the grid, then obviously you're reducing your carbon footprint. So you're taking really large leaps here. Now, there's one more segment I'd like to bring in, and I was really happy to see that you mentioned that in your presentation. And that is that when we talk about sustainability, it always tends to be environmental sustainability. Even us, we talk a lot about carbon calculators, we talk about, you know, decarbonization, transport, energy, all of that. But there's social sustainability as well. And I think it's extremely important to think about mental health, well-being, access, diversity and inclusion and equity at this point. And it's really nice to see you care about that at Eurimages. So I'm just wondering, from that perspective, what are some of the additional things you require? Because I've seen your funding questions about sustainability, but I have no awareness around EDI.
Well, it's a tricky question because I'm not in charge of this part of the work at Eurimages, and actually my colleagues in charge discussed today the next strategy or action plan for gender equality and diversity and inclusion. So I'm not aware of the decisions, but historically we had a lot of actions in terms of gender equality, so giving an advantage in terms of decision, number of decisions, but also in terms of kind of financial bonus to films directed by women. And it actually had a really good effect because we've seen during the last years that we reach more or less 50% in terms of number of films supported, but also we have seen an increase in the amount of support granted to films directed by women. So it's not only the numbers, so because usually these are cheaper films, but less and less the case for Eurimages. And for inclusion and diversity, it's a more difficult question because there are, as far as I know, again, it's not my field. There are very different views in the field between member states. So the approach in Canada or France or in Hungary may be very different, and everything we do is based on consensus. So we are an intergovernmental organization. So it's a very long discussions, and Julie can witness it sometimes. But we always try to find a way that is fine for all the member states, and we are still on this road for the moment.
Brilliant. Sorry to throw you a curveball.
No, that's
Didn't
okay.
mean
That's
to.
okay.
Actually, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to come back to the data questions because
Yeah.
we do not collect data, we collect information. But for instance, in terms of carbon calculator, we ask producers if they use a carbon calculator or which one, but we do not collect the numbers because then aggregating them and using them does not make a lot of sense at the moment, at least for us. And one other element, you talked about giving green bonuses or dirty discount, whatever way. One of the difficulties we have, and I think it's the same for a lot of institutions, is a lack of common standard. I will only mention two. The first one would be what is a green manager? What is a green manager, and on what basis should we give money to finance a green manager? It's very different again from one country to another. It's maybe very strict or totally free to call yourself a green manager. And more importantly for me, and I think it's one of the points we would like to explore in the future, it's certifications at the end of the project, certifications of our labels. So on which basis can an institution like Eurimages or a public institution say this film reach a certain level of sustainability, and we can be sure of that. And we can eventually give money in a bonus or give a malus if production do not reach that. So these are the 2 points which for me are really interesting in the future, is how can we standardize data collection and how can we harmonize especially certification, but harmonize a few standards between institutions.
Absolutely. As far as I'm aware, there's going to be, but please correct me, there's going to be, or there was a European tender for a new tool that is hopefully not a new calculator, but it's something that will harmonize all the carbon calculators that are out there, because not having a homogeneous data is obviously one of our biggest problem. And then I just like to give a shout out to a new report that recently came out by Hunter Warner and Pietro Kappa. It's the GEFP report. It talks about sustainability and requirements for policies, whether there's a need for policies or mandates around it. And the 3 pillars of that report came to be a need for a baseline, so we know where we're all starting, so like base minimum requirements. Second one was actually financial incentives, so we can encourage productions to act more sustainably. And the final one, which we haven't really talked about today, but I think it relates to your point theory, is auditing. Like how do you certify something? Who has the right to certify? Is it self audit? Now we have a few questions and it's question time. So I'd like to read them out to you. Let's start with the first one, and whoever can answer it, please go ahead and answer it. So how can student films improve on sustainability?
Well,
Quick-fire answer.
one thing I can say is that I know someone was telling me just a couple of days ago that film schools, at least in Quebec, I've started to make it mandatory for the student year-end like graduation film project to use these tools. I think we say how intentional it has to be, but the reality is that it is change for established producers. They have to change behavior. So I'm hopeful that in 5-10 years time, it's just going to be ingrained of the practice, because the students are going to have been trained with these tools to think about it from the onset, and for them, like all of our standard budget lines and all of that kind of stuff, that it's going to just be ingrained in their practice, or at least here's to hoping that it will be.
More and more universities are doing that, actually. And there are free carbon calculators for you to access worldwide. I believe there are a lot of resources, so yeah, you can find them if you Google. Karina?
Yeah, just quick. Also in Switzerland, we have some film schools. They are also improving sustainability, and I think it's at least a little less difficult because the mindset is different from the young people, and they are not just working since years in this industry and have these habits. So the mindset is different, I think, and hopefully the pressure also from the younger people also to take care of the process, of course, but also in the storytelling to improve this thematic without making the works not less good, but to be creative. And I think that's great. And we also with the association are in contact with students and have sometimes also with encounters with the class film schools, and just to keep the sensibility.
That's a nice view.
That's great.
That's a nice view. Consider sustainability not as a challenge, but as a not as a hindrance, but as a creative challenge from the start of, like, even if it's your grad project or something. So 2 more questions that I can see. Has Europe or Telefilm incorporated the emissions from financial institutions into the thinking forcing for funding or other sustainability requirements?
I'm wondering which financial institutions we're talking about. If it's like third party funding, I'm not an expert in all those carbon calculators. As I said, we don't impose one. I'm assuming that some carbon calculators go further than others in what they measure, but I don't know if any of them go as far as the emission of any banking that is used. In terms of Telefilm itself, we are in the process of benchmarking ourselves, and we have our own action plan. Of course, it's not just about imposing to others. We're doing our own homework for sure.
Maybe it's something, because a lot of the European tax incentives are currently being updated, renegotiated, or recently have been updated. I've been hearing a lot of chatter around sustainability kind of filtering that space as well, and perhaps making it, part of the cultural test in different scenarios that, you're going to go and shoot in their country, you're accessing the tax rebate, the tax incentive. Perhaps it's something that's tied to sustainability in the future. It's gonna come. If this is a practical question, if in a co-production, do you need to use carbon calculators for both countries if available and different? Or can you choose to use one country's calculator and report one set of data footprint? Good luck. Karina, you probably have a lot. Oh, sorry, Julie. Go ahead.
But I 2 seconds, just because we don't impose a carbon calculator. If a carbon calculator can be used for the whole production, we'd take it. So there you go.
Yeah, and if I may answer on regarding Eurimages, it's the same. We don't impose a carbon calculator. We see that's really a good question, and that's an unsolved issue, if I can say. We see films where co-producers use different calculators. Sometimes they have to redo the calculations for their national institutions with the other calculator. So it's really, it can become hell. That's why we don't impose one in particular, because then we could end up having 4 or 5 calculators for the same production. So that's really a good question, and yeah, we have to find a solution for that. But yeah, it cannot come from Eurimages alone, I must say.
I think it depends on the countries as well, and I think in there are some apart of from this other challenges for international co-production. So in the sense of if you have to shoot in different countries or different regions in order to get money from the regional funds or national funds. So this means that you have to do a lot of traveling, for example, and so on. So for several producers, this is a big problem as well. So there is how you could maybe, yeah, I know in Europe everything is, well, it's difficult because we have so many countries. So it's difficult to adjust, let's say, or to create, say, a budget for, for film, and you don't need necessarily to travel. So, for example, though this is there are some issues to resolve. Also in this carbon calculator. But for example, Germany is asking for to calculate the co-production country if it's more than 20%, I think, something like this. So you need to have
25, I think.
calculations in different countries, and then you can do it with the different calculators as well.
I think I'm not an expert on the topic. Whoever asked, it's probably quite bespoke depending on your deal. You need to look at who's your majority partner and who's your minority partner. Sometimes it's enough if your majority partner requires a carbon calculator, you do that. But in other cases, so it will be part of your contract because carbon calculators are part of your deliverables at this point, which means if you don't fulfill it, different countries, different funds will either withhold the money, or your production will not be eligible for airing in cinemas or on the cable or streamer, as you haven't fulfilled your deliverables, which we all know it's a very important part of actually completing your project. In our case, we've got a UK show. It's a Band 3 production, about 90% shooting in the UK, but we will be going to Germany to shoot the rest. And I was just looking at the same requirements, and it looks like if 25% of the production is shooting abroad, then we are still obliged to complete a Climactive carbon calculator. So it will be a double calculation on that, because the UK requires us to do an Albert in order for it to go on TV and streamers, and Germany requires a Climactive, so it will be a double book. But at least we have the chance to compare two set of data, right? This is exciting. Depending on emission factors, all of that. Anyhow, we've got one last question left that I missed previously. Apologies for that. So the final question is, what is the most difficult thing to implement in film and TV production? Or is there anything uncontrollable on productions? I presume from a sustainability point of view.
Carina.
Yes, I can say probably frankly, you cannot control weather if you shoot outside. So it's and sometimes you cannot control people, but that's another thing. So
that's weather inside, right?
Yeah, yes. But of course, we take care of that. I think for my perception, every mobility issue is pretty hard to take care of it. Actually, also it depends where you shoot, in which region, and also in which culture. Also the issue of food on set. If it's like whole vegetarian, vegan, or meat or whatever, this could be a topic for some departments. Yeah, depending from the production, also the waste management, the set design, the electricity consumption, because it depends from the country you're in, and we are here in Switzerland beginning to do something. We have of course we have some good things that are good working. But on the other side, in sense of cars and like vans or stuff like that, we are a little bit behind. So yeah, you have to take care of a few things. I think this is, yeah, it's my perception at the moment.
I think just to add, I think on one hand, I already talked about this, to have to travel to other countries in order, or regions. So that's makes a lot of emissions, which should be reduced in the next couple of years or 10 years, maybe, I don't know. And also to find other possibilities to finance, to give finance to a film. And sometimes I think it's very important, and sometimes not very easy to integrate the whole team, also to bring them on the same, let's say, level regarding sustainability. It's very important then that the producer and also the director are at the head of impulsing, in the head of encouraging people to to be aware of sustainability. And if this the head of it doesn't really work, it's difficult sometimes to bring the team together and on the same street, let's say, in some way. So I think this is very important to to raise awareness from the head of production in some way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to the four of you, and thank you very much for to SPF for you to invite us and let us talk about this. To leave you all with some thoughts, I do have to say, maybe some of the biggest things you can do in your production is start thinking early. Look at all the opportunities you can, whether you're doing a co-production or you're doing anything else. Look at your regional support from a sustainability point of view. Start thinking early, look at your script, and be as transparent as you can with your crew, and organize, you know, sustainability council meetings and power plan meetings, and talk about your goals with them, so they come along on the journey and they're not just forced to, you know, just do this sustainability thing, but they understand why is it happening to them, and they can, believe me, they'll enlist. They're happy to help. It's a common goal, and I'm very positive about our future. So thank you all for coming along, and feel free to reach out to any of us in the future.